can do.
The
Celtics win in 22 if Luka's there.
The ball
Take it a
dominant.
step further, Damo. They don't just win in 22. Go ahead.
The ball dominant guy that Luka is handling the basketball, doing as much as he does, which kind of takes away from what they were doing because that offense is the ball moving, people moving, but that's not going to go on now. What's going to go on is Luka's got the basketball. Luka's creating more offense for all of these guys. So now our offense has to change. Guys won't be playing as well as they was playing when the ball wasn't moving because that's who Luka is.
Remember when they swept the Nets? They lose that series with Luka.
I watched the floor. I've watched plenty. I've watched guys play well next to Luka with that game style. We're talking about putting Luka on a substantially better defense, which is something he would severely. That would be a massive benefit to him to play on that level of a defense with him maintaining the offense. And even if he is that kind of a guy that holds the ball that much, he's still going to get guys involved.
Yeah,
and we're talking about it
to him, Damo. To him, Damo.
He would have to change.
But if this version of Luka was on the Celtics right now, we would say they're the prohibited favorites, like across the league. Period.
But we're saying the same thing about the Celtics right now. With Jayson
I don't really know.
Domino, I'm sorry, but Damo, back to your point. So when we're talking about Luka, we're talking about a guy who he has to change his game. When have we seen Luka change his game?
When he played overseas and was required.
Oh yeah,
he was playing when he played on a team that required him to. When his pro career overseas, he played within the system. He was off the ball, and he had to play within the system. If you put him on the Celtics, he's going to be forced to come off the ball because there are so many other players. If you have a team that's catered to Luka and you have a team that's catered to him being ball dominant, then yes, Luka is going to assume the role of the engine. But if you put him on the Celtics with a good coacher, with a better coach, in my opinion, with better teammates and an actual scheme defensively, I mean, it'll be hard for me to say a guy that came into the NBA out of a system wouldn't be able to just revert to that system. God forbid he gets drafted to it, so he's just there from day one. God forbid he has the career path of a Jayson Tatum, where you come on a team with a Kyrie who's in his prime and sees as number one, and you're being groomed to fall into line versus going to Dallas, taking the job from Dennis Smith Jr., and also taking the reins from Dirk Nowitzki. He was set up to be the guy from day one in Dallas. It wouldn't have been that way if he was a Celtic.
Right. Only except what you're bringing up is you're bringing up an example of one, him playing in Europe, 7 years ago? That's number one. And number two, playing in the FIBA World Championships. Every 2 years, I think he's doing that. Meanwhile, he's been in Dallas for 6 years. This is primarily what I do. Now you're asking me to change my game completely because I'm now playing in the NBA as opposed to me playing. I can change my game for 5 minutes in the FIBA tournament. I can change my game for 5 minutes in the Olympics. I can do that. But now you're asking me to do that over the course of time and stay that way. This is who Luka is. The ball.
You gotta ask yourself, like, sometimes, and for a player's perspective, like, sometimes it's more important for a player to win their way than to go into a team and being like, playing a different play style. And it seems to me personally, just watching James Harden or even watching Luka Doncic, they want to win their way, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't know if he will go to the Boston Celtics and be able to fit in and play a different play style, especially what OG said about him being this dual engine for the past 7 years and him being this play style that he loves to play. Like, he enjoys playing this play style. Like, so James Harden just said it.
James Harden just said
very hard.
That's who Luka is.
And that comes from years and years of having to play like that. And again, if we're talking about just swapping Luka now, yes, it'll be an adjustment because his game has changed since he was a rookie. But just like with James Harden, if James Harden goes from being a six-man playing in a system on the Thunder, a completely different brand and style of basketball, he was honestly seen as a completely different player, and goes to Houston and turns it on and plays a different game, and he plays
the next game
and plays it for a consecutive amount of time, years, with certain levels of expectations. He's rewarded for playing this way, so he adapted his game that way. So yes, it'll be hard to say, "Oh yeah, James, go back to being the guy you were before you went to the Rockets." He's been playing this way so long, he adapted his game this way. So yeah, Luka Doncic, I'm not gonna say it's gonna be seamless and easy. Luka is still relatively young. And again, he's already displayed the ability to do this, and Luka is a good basketball mind.
But if he was playing next to Jaylen Brown and Derek White and Drew Holiday and them too, Damo, like, I think to think that
they would prefer him to have the ball and
right.
play make.
The Celtics offense is to create open threes. Who does that better than Luka?
Right, that's what I'm saying. Him and Trae Young. So in Halliburton,
give him the ball. Like that he fits what they want. They want open threes. Luka creates open threes better than anyone. So guess what, Jaylen Brown? Your handle isn't great. Now we've got someone whose handle is great. Now Jaylen Brown can play off the ball, spot up, play in transition. He doesn't have as much on-ball responsibility because realistically, he probably doesn't deserve as much on-ball responsibility. Drew Holiday, yeah, you can initiate offense sometimes, but I've seen this year, Luka Doncic can play off the ball sometimes. When Kyrie has the ball, Luka Doncic comes off some down screens. He even sets screens sometimes. So Luka Doncic has shown this year that he can do things without the basketball, definitely more than he has in years past. But I don't know, people just don't want to watch the Mavericks or just ignore when Luka's off the ball and he's setting screens for Kyrie, or if he's coming off curl screens or he's coming off back screens to get post ups. He's doing all those things, but I guess it's not important. So
they don't care because they don't like him.
So like when I'm talking about Luka doesn't need to have Steph Curry off ball movement. He doesn't need to do that.
He's gonna have the ball in his hands. I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm not
he's
saying
going to have the ball in his hands more because he's Luka Doncic. He's just good enough to have the ball in his hands more. Right. I'm certain if Jayson Tatum was as good with the ball in his hands as Luka, the Celtics would put the ball in Jayson Tatum's hands more. I'm certain of it. But because Luka Doncic is so good with the ball in his hands, they would put the ball in his hands more. Now, would he have to play off the ball maybe more than he does now? Sure. But he would also have the ball more than Jayson Tatum does now because that's just the prerequisite.
And you want to even talk about Tatum has these valleys that we've all acknowledged in the playoffs and in the regular season, but in the playoffs that we all acknowledge is one of the reasons why people think the Celtics are going to struggle versus some of these elite teams in the playoff setting. Luka doesn't have valleys, like for the most part. His floor is much higher than Tatum's, and his ceiling, Tatum's ceilings are 51-point games in the game 7 and all. I get it, but Luka's been a profound scorer throughout his playoff career and a great playmaker throughout his playoff career and a really good rebounder. So if you just inserted that into what the Celtics are doing, for instance, I mean, then you're walking away with a 28, 8, and 10 person on the regular in a playoff setting, and it's going to be relatively efficient in the fact that he's playing with such a great team. So
it's the player choice way. Yeah, them boys don't get it started. The player choice way. You're the player choice way. Come and switch lanes into the player choice way.